now, my friends, on talkSPORT and talkRADIO. There have been many famous vans down the years. There was my favourite van, Rouge, the Comma van, but above all of them stands Van Connor, our main man when it comes to all movies. Not from the O'Connor, Sinead, Des and Tom O'Connor showbiz family. No. He's a man alone, an island of movie critique excellence, and he joins us now each and every week to give us 3 Freeview film recommendations for the weekend. Good morning, Van. And you've got some real pips and pieces, one of which you beat me to the punch on. How have you been? How's your week been, Van?
Do you know, I've been very good, thank you, Mr. Ross. I got to see Barbie this week, so that was a hoot. I got to get all, pink, plastic, fantastic, so it's been a good week. How's your week been?
Very good. I mean, I've had some really good reviews of Barbie. I must admit, I was approaching it very cautiously. The cast should have given me a clue it was going to be pretty darn good. Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, and it's as good as people say, is it?
Oh, absolutely, and it's got my favourite use of the song Butterfly by Crazy Town in any movie since Orange County in 2002.
And Rob Brydon's got a cameo in it, so it can't be all bad, my mate Rob. So let's start with your first recommendation.
Yeah.
Film 4, 9 o'clock tonight, and it's the end of life on Earth, possibly, as we know it, is it not?
It is, as we're told in the movie, basically all the worst parts of the Bible. It's one of, as far as scripting goes, this is one of my very favourite, ever movie scripts, because it's absolutely deranged, and yet, its director, Michael Bay, his own university professor, held this up as a masterwork in how to lay out a large ensemble cast and make sure that your audience knows who every single one of them is in record time. And it's hard to dispute that. So it's Armageddon from 1998, one of 2 movies released that year that dealt with a very similar plot. Obviously, we'll talk about that, I presume, more in a minute. And this involves an asteroid the size of Texas that's headed towards Earth in 18 days, and the US government and NASA decide, rather than train a bunch of astronauts to become oil drillers, it's quicker and easier to train I don't know how this works, but it's quicker and easier to train a bunch of oil drillers to become astronauts, send them up onto the asteroid and have them drill a hole so that they can drill an 800-foot hole so that they can drop a nuke down it and blow the asteroid up from the inside, thus saving the Earth. Of course, our would-be astronauts, our oil drillers turned astronauts, are a sort of Dirty Dozen type band of misfits. Oil drillers led by Harry, played by Bruce Willis, with a crew that includes the likes of Steve Buscemi, Ben Affleck, Owen Wilson, Michael Clarke Duncan, a who's who, a murderer's row of absolute deranged maniacs. You can see this tonight, 9 p.m. on Film 4. If you never have, then frankly, I don't know where you think the Aerosmith song comes from, because the Aerosmith song is just so intrinsically tied to this. But it's an all-timer. It's a banger. It's something that really kind of capitalized on the gender line crossing, action for the boys, romance for the girls sort of fandom of Titanic about a year previous. And like I say, I've got a clip for you. This is not Ben Affleck, Bruce Willis giving NASA his demands for taking his motley crew into space.
So it's 9 o'clock tonight. It's Film 4. It's Armageddon. You don't have to miss a thing.
Hey, you guys wouldn't be able to tell us who actually killed Kennedy, would you? Bear would like to stay at the White Horse.
White House. White House.
White House. Yeah, he'd like to stay in the Lincoln bedroom of the White House for the summer. Stuff like that.
Sure, I think we can take care of some of that.
Harry.
Yeah, one more thing. None of them want to pay taxes again. Ever.
Seems reasonable to me. I wish there was a comic coming my way with my tax bill due any moment now. So that's your recommendation. Well, mine is on Film 4. It is tonight. It's the one you've hinted at, being released in the same year, in fact, as Armageddon. Deep Impact. Rather different from, it's said to be more scientifically accurate than Armageddon, but I suspect the back of a cornflakes box is more scientifically accurate than Armageddon. But it's by Mimi Leader, who made some interesting films. Didn't really click with the public. I mean, this one made money, but was overshadowed by Armageddon. And again, it's got a great starry cast. Robert Duvall, Tia Leone, Elijah Wood, Morgan Freeman, and one of my favourite actors, Maximilian Schell, is in it as well. well. And it's basically about an Ellie, which is an extinction level event, as they call it. And the powers that be in this film have known that this asteroid thing, life-ending, disastrous impact, has been coming for a number of years, if not months. So they've made huge preparations, which involve a lottery that something like in the USA, I think 100,000 people are eligible to hide from the asteroid's impact. Everyone else is pretty much going to be brown bread. So there's an interesting split in families. There's a race against time, and there's also Robert Duvall as a kind of ride-em cowboy, a sort of space jockey who's going as a human pinball to try and knock the asteroid slightly off course to reduce the impact. So there's lots going on in this film. Again, it's interesting because it's a kind of, I suppose people that when we were approaching the year 2000, the new millennium, maybe they're thinking in terms of, could be the end of days type thing. But I prefer Armageddon as an entertainment thrill ride. As a film, I think Deep Impact is a better film. You care more about the characters. But then, that's what's great about the cinema. You don't have to pay your money and get your choice on Freeview. You've got both of them. Deep Impact is 6:30, film 4 tonight. 9 o'clock is Armageddon. Let's have a clip now from Deep Impact from the trailer. Here we go.
Are we on?
We're on, Mr. President.
A few minutes ago, the United States ambassadors to every country in the world told the leaders of those nations what I'm about to tell you. The comets are still headed for Earth. Now, we've been planning for the worst, so I hope you'll bear with me and listen to what I have to say. To ensure the continuation of our way of life, we've been preparing a network of immense caves, and we can put 1 million people in them, underground, for 2 years. On August 10th, we're going to hold a national lottery. A computer will randomly select 800,000 Americans to join the 200,000 scientists, teachers, soldiers, and artists who have already been chosen. In addition, the United States and Russia have been building the largest spaceship ever constructed to stop the comets.
I missed out a zero. It's 1 million people going to be saved. So not quite as grim as I made it sound. Still pretty darn grim when you think about it. It's a great cast. It's on at 6:30 this evening on Film 4, followed by Armageddon, Van's first recommendation. What's your second Freeview tip for the weekend, Van?
Well, this was in development for a very, very long time. It's called Gemini Man, and I think it was only released in 2019. It was not long, not long before the pandemic. And it stars Will Smith. It's directed by Ang Lee, famously gave us Brokeback Mountain, and in recent years has very much fallen into this pattern of making IMAX-friendly films in high frame rates. So this was actually released in cinemas in 120 frames a second. So if you watched it, it was absolutely mind-boggling to sit and watch, because everything looked very pinpoint real and sort of disjointed and jarring. It was a really strange experience. But you get not one but two Will Smiths for your money with this one. So Will Smith is the veteran hitman, basically the age that Will Smith actually is, who finds himself face to face with his most lethal opponent ever, who's actually a younger clone of himself. So they use CG de-aging tech and makeup effects to basically give us a sort of 25-year-old Will Smith versus, the now currently 50-something-year-old Will Smith. All under the machinations of an evil scientist played by Clive Owen. It's pretty good fun, to be honest. It's not brilliant, but it's pretty good fun. There's some great fights. There's a wonderful chase sequence in which Will Smith literally has to fight using a motorcycle. It was overshadowed by the frame rate trickery, which I think took a lot of the enjoyment out of it. But watching it on TV, you've not really got that to worry about, so you can actually sit and enjoy the film properly. So this is on Film 4, again at 9 p.m. This is on Saturday night, 9 p.m. Good ride, like I say, Ang Lee directing, and the man has some action chops, always has, but it's really about the fun of, it's Will Smith versus Will Smith, even though Will Smith already actually has an actual son, that actual age, who looks enough like him that they could have feasibly just pulled that off that way. But you know what? It's an excuse to whip out some de-aging tech. So have some fun. Here's a clip of Will Smith meeting, not Jaden, aka younger Will Smith, in Gemini Man.
I'm guessing 19, 20 years old, the first time he ordered you to shoot a person. 25 years ago, he took my blood. He made you from me. He's been lying to you the whole time. He told you you were an orphan. And of all the people in the world to come after me, why would he send you? Because thinks I'm the best. You are obviously not the best. You're just trying to rattle me. I'm trying to save you!
Oh, it's a good film, this, actually. I've only ever seen it on the TV, and for me, I hadn't realised about the frame rate. It just looks slightly 3D. But it's still got amazing angle direction, great action sequences. He's unlucky, though, with some. I mean, he had a great hit with Independence Day, Will Smith, but After Earth, the M. Night Shyamalan misfire, and this one didn't really do much business at the cinemas, did they?
Well, no, Will Smith has had some turkeys to his name. I mean, obviously, Wild Wild West was the first huge bomb of his career. But, you know, there are some absolute all-timer well, not even summer, just studio tentpoles under his belt. I'm particularly partial to Enemy of the State.
Great film.
From 1998.
And although, of course, you need to watch that with a film we recommend.
Which is, I think, is best.
With the Conversation, don't you? The Coppola film, which it kind of almost is a sort of sequel to. But two great films. Well, listen, I've got another recommendation. I make no apology, folks, for drawing your attention to this one. And I suspect it's a bit of clever scheduling from Great Movies, Freeview channel. It's 9 o'clock tonight, because they're showing a Ryan Gosling film. Not Barbie related. It's actually called Drive. It's a great, very, almost 80s looking cold film. Very well directed by a man called Nicholas Is it Refn, I think you pronounce his name. He's Danish. He's also known as Jang, I think.
Nicholas Winding Refn, I think.
And he also worked with Tom Hardy on films like Bronson, so he's got a kind of a penchant for extremes of human behaviour. And this is certainly about that. Basically, it's a man, Ryan Gosling, who's, you know, the way too good looking stunt driver by day. But at any time of the day or night, he can drop all that and become the greatest getaway driver in modern times. He makes Steve McQueen, even in the getaway, look like a lightweight. And he's got very strict rules of conduct, and he starts to break those rules to ring fence himself from trouble when he starts to get involved with what he thinks is a single mum played by Carey Mulligan. In fact, she's married to Oscar Isaac's character, who's badly in debt. Against his better judgment, he agrees to do a job involving the husband, even though he's in love with the wife. That doesn't end particularly well, and that means he's up against, I think, one of the great villains of our time. People forget what a great actor Albert Brooks is. I mean, he's great in films like, you know, he's made some great comedies, but actually in this film, he's fantastic because he's a smiling, hideous, monstrous mobster. Bryan Cranston's in it as well, of course, from, you know, from Breaking Bad, but also films like recently Trumbo, and Ron Perlman in it. I like any film that Ron Perlman's in. It's from the year 2011. Oh, yeah. It's on tonight at 9 o'clock, and I think this. Of the films I've seen of Winding Refn, I think this is his best film for me. He's made some other interesting films since then. I did like Bronson in a weird kind of way. It was, you know, once I got my head around the fact it was what was happening in Bronson's head, played by Tom Hardy. But I think it's also one of Ryan Gosling's best films because he's fantastically glacial in this, and he's so cold in this one. Yeah,
I think this will wind up being probably the most iconic role of Gosling's career, like by far. Like even playing Ken, he'll never be as recognised for playing Ken as he is for playing the driver. You know, just with that steely gaze and that scorpion jacket. It's just, that's the image I think that we'll have of Ryan Gosling now as an actor.
And Stuart, who's behind the glass looking at me now, he tends not to watch any film unless they're wearing Marvel-type costumes. I've given him to look at the fight in the lift, which is one of the best fight sequences in modern times, I think. So it's worth seeing for that alone, folks. It's called Drive. It's on 9 o'clock tonight on Great Movies from 2011. And this will get you in a kind of hitting the road type mood.
If I drive for you, you give me a time and a place. I give you a 5-minute window. Anything happens in that 5 minutes and I'm yours. I don't sit in while you're running it down. I don't carry a gun. I drive.
So you just moved to LA?
No, I've been here for a while.
What do?
I drive for movies.
Is that dangerous?
It's only part-time. You put this kid behind the wheel. There's nothing he can't do. Kid, I want you to meet Mr. Bernie Rose. My hands are a little dirty. So am I.
Whoa, so am I. It's a great film, that is Drive. I've seen it so many times. I'm going to watch it as well. This and Baby Drive will make a great double bill. And I don't know how recently you've seen the only decent film, in my opinion, that Ryan O'Neal ever made, The Driver, directed by Walter Hill. Have you seen that recently? Where he's
that got a reissue, I think.
It's a great film, that as well. And similarly Cold. It's as a companion piece, that's a great movie to watch as well. But this is Drive. It's on 9 o'clock tonight on Great Movies. And my final recommendation is, I mean, you know, if you haven't seen this, where have you been? If you have seen it, you want to watch it again. It's not my favourite big screen epic by Mel Gibson, starring Mel Gibson as well. I prefer The Patriot, just as a different kind of story, but Braveheart is without a doubt one of the phenomenons of the 90s, and it's still with us today. Of course, Nicola Sturgeon's favourite film, no surprise there, and basically concerns a highly fictionalised account of the life of William Wallace, who was a Scottish rebel against the then England king. I mean, he's notoriously bad-tempered, intemperate man, Edward I. And, but, you know, he was known as the Hammer of the Scots, which gives you an indication this film probably doesn't end too well. Spoiler alert for Braveheart himself, but some great action sequences along the way. Very old-fashioned, apart from some of the violence in it. And it is an indication of, I know all directors have help with second unit directors and people, but of how Mel Gibson could handle this kind of swirling epic. And it is a great modern epic. I think it's the kind of film that, you know, had a penchant for real violence. I think David Lean might have even directed, which is praise indeed. So that's on 10:30 Sunday night. It is Braveheart, of course. Now we all know the story, I'm sure. Evil English, as you and me folks probably, although I'm called Scottish, I think. Braveheart's wife doesn't end well for her, other problems, the English trying to tax them, take control of their land, push them out in favour of landowners, so one man has to make a stand, not the road warrior, but it is of course William Wallace, as played by the director as well of this, Mel Gibson, and here's a chunk of the Caledonian trailer.
I love you. Always have. I want to marry you.
And I you and no other.
I came back home to raise crops in the family. If I can live in peace, I will. We will be more merciful than they have been. We'll spare the women and the children. For all else, no mercy.
I want this Wallace's heart on a plate.
Where are you going? I'm going to pick a fight. Well, didn't get dressed up for nothing.
So it's got a very modern feel to the dialogue, of course, but it's an old cracker, this one. And finally, Van, your final recommendation for Sunday is what, please?
Well, this is the very, very first studio tentpole movie that I ever reviewed as a critic, so it has a special place in my heart. It is 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and this was in development for, I think, near a decade under the title Caesar. It was meant to be a sort of stealth reboot, marketed as a sort of stealth reboot of the Planet of the Apes series. Obviously, they wound up just sticking the proper title in there and calling it Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Gave birth to a trilogy, soon to become a quadrilogy in the next year or two. Right. And this first incarnation features James Franco as the scientist who is using simians as test subjects for an experimental treatment for Alzheimer's in order to treat his own father, played by John Lithgow in the film. Andy Serkis, a.k.a. Gollum back then, provides the motion capture performance, indeed the actual performance, because it is an actual dramatic performance, as Caesar the ape, whose intelligence starts to increase to the point of literally gaining verbal abilities. And it is sort of a Frankenstein's monster-like story that we know has that element of tragedy of, leading to the events of Planet of the Apes. It's quite a clever prequel. It's set in the present day, doesn't go to the dystopian sort of, post-apocalyptic realm of the Apes movies. This is all set in our contemporary world, and is really just a sort of, it's a Pandora's box story. Let's say, so starring James Franco, David Oyelowo,
I must say,
Peter
they make a real mistake here in the recruitment at that centre that looks after these apes, because they hire, of all people, Draco Malfoy. No, even not having seen the Harry Potter films, you know that blonde-haired guy's a wrong one. And of course he's going to be horrible to the apes, and that won't end well either. So, I really enjoy this. It wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be a typical kind of attempt to do the ABCs of the original Charlton Heston film. No, it's actually, it is a very clever film, and it's got a real tragic dimension to it as well, this film, I thought.
Yeah, it really has. It's played largely as a tragedy, and that becomes the signature of this trilogy. It's worth noting as well that as a fan of the original Planet of the Apes, you presumably would appreciate that they do actually set up, literally in the background of this movie, the actual mission that Charlton Heston is on as being like a launch that's taking place in the background, like on the news and everything in the background. Really clever movie. So you can see this Sunday night at 9 p.m. on 5 Star. It's a great one to close the weekend out with. Not the movie you would expect at all from the Planet of the Apes branding. Just a really heartfelt, grounded tragedy with an amazing performance from Andy Serkis.
And I'm amazed they didn't call the sequel Ape Apocalypse Now. But there is a bit of graffiti in the second one where somebody's written on the side of a cave or something, Ape Apocalypse Now. So they obviously considered it at one time. So it's on, when is it on? It's on Sunday night, of course, but 9 o'clock, you were saying, 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock on 5 Star on Sunday. Now, I've got a clip for you, and this is David Oyelowo as the head of the genetics research company, throwing his weight around when it comes to how to handle their simian specimens.
Don't monkey around, here we go.
Mr. Jacobs, I am begging you not to do this.
Look, it will cost a small fortune to run lab workups on all of those chimps only to tell me what I already know, that they are contaminated.
There are lives at stake here. These are animals with personalities, with attachments.
Attachments? Yeah. I run a business, not a petting zoo. find the most cost-effective way to put those apes down.
That's going to come back and bite him, isn't it? You don't need to be a clairvoyant to work that one out. So, Van, last week I think Off-Screen took a break, did it not? But you're back this week with a bang, I'd imagine. Both a bang for Barbie and a bang for possibly Oppenheimer.
Well, we didn't get to see Oppenheimer, annoyingly. There were too many influencers invited instead. But I did get to see Barbie, and we did get to see They Cloned Tyrone, which is a really fun blaxploitation satire that Netflix are putting out today, which I heartily recommend. And we are covering both, of course, along with the new Hitchcock documentary, Mark Cousins' new Hitchcock documentary. My name is Alfred Hitchcock, which has got Alistair McGowan providing the voice and narration as Alfred Hitchcock. Really interesting. You would really appreciate that, Paul. So you can hear Adam Ball and I on the Off-Screen show, on Off-Screen, on podcast platforms from 8 a.m.
As a recommendation, of course, I'm sure you know this, folks, but Sky Arts, which I think is also a Freeview channel, are running the old Alfred Hitchcock Presents Good Evening, ladies and gentlemen. And if you go into their vaults, I suppose you'd call it, their archives, you can see an awful lot of their ones. There's some of them, he only directed a few of them, but he kind of links them all very wittily. And there's some great early directors working those. They're well worth a look as well. That was the mighty Van Connor Off-Screen today, of course. We'll talk about Oppenheimer maybe next week, then, and I'm seeing it this weekend, so can't wait to get to. I mean, basically it's 3 hours long, but I love a long film, as you know. And it does look fantastic. And anything with Christopher Nolan's got to be worth at least 1 or 2 looks, I think. That was Van Connor, of course, the main man when it comes to Freeview movie recommendations for the weekend. You had 3 from him, 3 from me. You get your, choice of 6 there. I'd urge you, if you're a movie fan, you've probably seen most of them already, but it's always worth setting the record. You never know when you get a rainy afternoon, when not even talkSPORT can suffice. And Van Connor's with us again next Friday on talkSPORT and talkRADIO, where my friends, we're live, blimey, it's at the time, till 5.